Hello, freak bitches. Boom. And we're live. Speaking of vacations, tell me about Guyana.
Yeah, that's a good
Dude,
segue.
You've been there a bunch.
You know, I've
How
been
many
there
times
twice.
now? I thought it was 3.
No, well, I've been to Guyana twice, but between there I went to Bolivia.
Oh.
And did like very similar kind of trip. Like a doing a river trip with Amerindians.
Are those people weirded out by Americans because of the Jonestown massacre thing? Is there
Dude,
any...
it's so funny you bring up Jonestown because there's a couple things I've been surprised. Like, the main group I was with in Guyana is the Makushi, and I was surprised one day when I was they make a dish. They make a dish with cassava, which is a root like manioc. They make a dish with that. They make a flour from it and make a dish. And I was one day saying that, hey, that looks like pizza, right? No, right? No comprehension, like no thought of what pizza is. And I remember thinking like, wow, man, like something you take like such a, you just consider such a part of everyday life is pizza.
They didn't know what it was.
Yeah, and they don't know about Georgetown.
Whoa.
Even though it was in their own country.
They don't know about it at all?
No, it's just not. But you gotta, like, we'll get into this, but you gotta, like, realize sort of how insular, and the Amerindian communities are who live in the jungle in Guyana.
Yeah, do they have communication at all? Any cell
Yeah, they do.
phones,
Yeah,
or...
more and more now. And there was a lot changed the 2 times I went there, which were 5 or 6 years apart. They discovered sunglasses. And I remember the first time I was down there trying to turn them on because, they bow hunt for fish, right? Which is one of the main ways they get fish is bow hunting for fish. And when you're looking into the water, polarized lenses are invaluable. I feel lost without them.
Yeah,
Trying
they're
to
amazing.
spot fish underwater. And I kept saying, man, you got to get on board with polarized sunglasses. And I'd hand them to him. He didn't like it. This guy Rovin, he didn't like anything about having them on his face. He just like couldn't do it. But then I go down there 5 years later, and every one of those boys is rocking polarized glasses. So you see changes. But yeah, that's the thing with I've brought up Jonestown a number of times because in the U.S., if you say, "Hey, I'm going to Guyana," all anybody says is, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid."
Right.
And
It
everyone knows,
wasn't really Kool-Aid? It was some like...
Kool-Aid. No,
It was a Kool-Aid type drink.
No.
No?
So when people look at we had this conversation because there's a couple of things that are important here. What the poison was, right? So we had a conversation. All right, let me back up. The root I mentioned, they make a
Cassava.
root. Yeah. So there's a root cassava, and it's
Is that
like
the poisonous stuff?
Yeah. So it's the root that gives all life. They eat.
That's what they call it?
No, but I mean, they eat fish and game, okay, river fish and wild game, and then that's like a staple that they eat every day. And the other thing they eat every day is a half dozen things all produced from cassava, which is kind of like a yam, and it's cultivated with slash and burn agriculture. And they cultivate these yams, and from it they make a flour. They make a type of grain that's like couscous. They make a syrup that's used as a coloring agent and a flavoring agent. They make a non-alcoholic drink. They make a somewhat alcoholic drink that would be like an equivalent to beer. And then they make a much more alcoholic drink, which would be an equivalent to like fortified wine.
Wow.
They make all this stuff from this root that they grow. In its raw form, when you shred the root and squeeze the shredding. So it'd be like, imagine you took a yam and shredded a yam and then squeezed the yam between your hands and dripped out a liquid. That liquid is deadly poisonous. Okay. Dogs, chickens, people, anything that drinks that liquid dies.
Jesus.
And it's cyanide. So
Wow.
the Jonestown massacre was a cocktail of the best. People think that it was Kool-Aid, Flavor Aid, Valium, and potassium cyanide. My question coming home from Ghana was, like, was the cyanide from the root? Were they like doing homemade cyanide? And so when I got home, I looked into this, and it seems as that commune, Jonestown commune, had been ordering actual potassium cyanide, which is used in a number of mining practices and other stuff. So it's an available compound, and that's what they lace the Kool-Aid with.
I'd heard about this cassava stuff. And what do they know what the process is? Like, did they know like how people figured out how to make it non-poisonous?
No.
And how, wow, it's just been done so long.
Yeah, and the same stuff with like different poisons they use to poison that people use to poison fish. What strikes me about it is how in the village, like the Makushi village I was in, is mostly Makushi, but there's also like Wapashana, which is another tribe. Carib is another tribe, but it's predominantly a Makushi village, and there's about 300 people that live in this village. And how careless they are with the liquid. Like if you nowadays, like picture like you're like the type of person that like you and me are married to and raised kids with, right? If you had that type of mom and you had a big bowl of a liquid that would kill you if you drank a bit, how that bowl would be monitored in your household.
Jesus Christ. There'd be
Right?
like barbed wire around it, electrical fence. And how do
But
they
this
do
shit
it?
just lays
They
out.
just lay it out?
And I was asked this guy, Roman, I'm like, hey man, I kept returning to this. There's certain things I would always ask him, just like things that he struggled to understand my fixation on it. But I kept saying to this Makushi guy, Rovan, who I should back up to Guyana communication. So Guyana it's the only English-speaking country in South America.
Everyone speaks it.
No. The government functions are English. So if you picture South America, it's northeast corner, opening out onto the southern Caribbean. That's Guyana. It's bordered on the east by Suriname, on the west by Venezuela, to the south by Brazil. It's 90% virgin rainforest.
Wow.
And within that 90% of virgin rainforest is only 10% of the population. So the coastal peoples are like Creole cultures, people mostly descended from slave trade, Europeans. In the interior are the Amerindian groups. And the government functions, sort of the power in Guyana is the coastal peoples. And there's not a ton of and there used to be barely any interplay between the Amerindian communities and the government. The government's English speaking. So you'll find that there's a lot of English mixed in the Amerindian communities. And some people, like this guy Rovan, because he's sort of he has a leadership role in his community, and he's learned just standard English very well. He's had a fascinating life, just how much stuff has changed for him. So you can just like converse, okay, in a way that you can converse in a type of the type of English we're talking right now, almost, which creates this weird tension between the things that you're discussing and how you're discussing them. Like, for instance, to have a guy just in conversational English talking about problems they're having with neighboring shamans and their own shaman, putting curses on each other. And it like creates there's like a strange tension between like how it's being conveyed to you, you know?
Like how so?
Like, okay, if you're talking conversational English, I guess like a life, it's almost like you'd want it to be, when he's telling you this, you'd almost want to be reading it in like closed caption. And he'd be saying it in the indigenous language, because it sounds weird to have an idea that's so foreign to us, which would be like a battle of shamans battling over access to wild animals. Okay. To have that delivered in conversational English just struck me as unusual. And because like usually when you're traveling, you're getting all of your information, like traveling in Bolivia, a guy would tell a story, and he'd tell a story in Tsimshian. No, what am I saying? Not Tsimshian. Chamane. Okay. He'd tell a story in Chamane to a person who spoke Spanish. The person who speaks Spanish would tell it to a person. No. A Chamane guy telling someone who speaks Chamane in Spanish. Then that person telling it to a person who speaks Spanish and English. And then that person giving you the information.
Whoa.
When you get it, through that, it takes on a mystical quality, like you're crossing some space-time thing, right? You're seeing like these ideas discussed in their ancestral tongue, okay?
Yeah.
Do you remember I sent you a video of a guy talking about killing a jaguar?
Yes.
Right? the language you've never, like when he's speaking, you're like, I've never, in all my travels, I've never heard a language that sounds anything like that.
Is the video online? Can we play it?
Yeah, it's online.
What do you know the title of it?
It's I think if you type in like Chimane, TSI, Chimane, Jaguar, attack.
See if Jamie can find it,
you'll
'cause
pull it up.
It's very cool. The language is really amazing.
So
it seems so ancient.
Yes. It's not like, has nothing to do with like the Latin languages.
It just sounds so, it's very unique.
So I guess what I'm getting at is to hear someone talking about something in conversational English that seems so far removed from just our understanding of things, it takes on a weird quality. But what's nice about it is you can go to a place where life is so vastly different than anything we understand and just get like the straight dope right from the source.
Right.
Is why I love, it's kind of like what's so cool about Guyana, because you can go and converse with people who are very much a hunter-gatherer culture today, but just shoot the shit with them without ever feeling like you're missing something.
Wow.
It's like everything's not lost in translation and all weird and garbled and like painstaking to wade through. But you can just ask, like, hey, what's up with the local shaman? Well, I'll give you the dope on the local shaman.
And so they trade spells?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But I feel like I was laying the groundwork for the Jim Jones poison.
Did you find the video?
No, I lost the word that you were spelling. The
TSIMANE.
TSIMANE. What does that mean?
Chimane.
That's how they spell it?
I could be screwing up. You know how you spell a lot worse when you're not actually writing it out?
Yeah, I'm terrible. I don't know how anybody wins a spelling bee ever. Chumani is TSI?
Yeah, so if you type in Chimane Jaguar, TSIMANE Jaguar.
Wow.
The whole thing is an Amerindian hunter remembers his best dog lost to a jaguar in the jungles of Bolivia.
All right, here we go. Let's play this because it's fucking awesome. Here we go. Following is an interview with a member of the Chumani tribe of Bolivia. Due to their inherent difficulties of translating the indigenous language, the subtitles are at times approximate. So he's explaining where he's from. He's saying he hunts for food. I always share the meat I get with my family. I'm a good provider of meat. He's cutting up the meat in this video. I also enjoy the adventure. I love trekking through the jungle. Once I was hunting with my favorite dog and a couple other dogs. They ran ahead barking. They were going after something. All of a sudden, my favorite dog just went completely silent. They were about 50 meters ahead of me. When I got there, the other dogs had gone ahead after something. Saying my favorite dog was lying there dead, and there was a big hole in his right side, almost looked like it had been arrowed. First thing I did is pick up my dog and set him where the ants wouldn't get to his body. That dog was the bravest one I had. I'm not going to translate anymore. You guys should just watch the video if you're interested, but you get a sense of how cool it is.
So, did we fully cover the poison thing?
No, not really.
So I got home, so it wasn't the same poison, but Jim Jones, he grew up in he was involved in a Pentecostal church. He's involved in the Methodist church. Then he kind of became a healer and started his own cult. And it was funny, I was reading about him when I was trying to figure out the poison. I was reading about how he was kind of ahead of his time because the Jim Jones massacre was 1979 in 78 or 79. And one thing that got him sideways with his church was that he wanted to have an interracial service.
Wow.
And that caused friction in his church at the time, earlier in his career. And he moved out to the Bay Area and started this church, and then he got kind of paranoid and thought that his congregants shouldn't be engaging in sexual activities, but he was siring illegitimate children left and right. They go down to Guyana, go out to the jungle, there's 1,000 of them down there. People in the U.S. from the Bay Area are kind of wondering what happened to their loved ones. They send a congressman down there to try to figure out what's going on. He shows up with a bunch of cameras. the congressman says, he's like, I'm going to help anyone who wants to go back to the Bay Area, go back to the Bay Area. He goes to the airstrip. There's a shootout. The U.S. congressman gets killed in the shootout. And then they just all start killing themselves with the poison and firearms and other shit. 270 some kids, over 900 people.
Yeah, I remember it.
It's like the defining thing. But then, yeah, when you talk to these boys, I'm like, Georgetown, like the Jonestown, or the Jim Jones, Jonestown massacre, never drink the Kool-Aid. They're like, no.
See, I'd heard it was budget Kool-Aid.
No, that's a debate.
Some of it was,
and that's a debate. And in trying to dig around and find the source of the cyanide, which became very important to me to learn for some reason. No, and I think Kool-Aid even tried to distance himself from it.
That's probably was Kool-Aid.
But there's like some archival stuff, and I guess in this archival stuff, images like footage taken around and photographs around, people have found out that they had both Flavor Aid and Kool-Aid on hand.
That's hilarious. What it was Kool-Aid propaganda that's trying to pass the buck on the Flavor Aid.
So yeah, no thing there. And if you go up, the main river that drains Guyana is the Essequibo, and if you go way up the Essequibo, and you'll get to a stream that comes in from there called the Rupununi, and you go up the Rupununi, and then you get to the Rewa, and at the mouth of the Rewa in Rupununi is Rewa Village, and in Rewa Village you're isolated enough where you don't know about 900 Americans and some other people from other areas, dying in a mass suicide.
Wow, that's
around the time you were born.
That's fascinating. It makes sense though that they're just so removed from it.
Yeah.
Do they use agriculture? Like, how are they getting this cassava?
They grow peppers, and then they grow the cassava. And the cassava, like, it's kind of amazing. We always hear about slash and burn agriculture. So they'll go in and do a slash and burn in a spot out in the jungle. But it's like a recycled sort of slash and burn agriculture. And I'll break down what that means. So they'll go into an area and slash everything and burn it just to clear just so sunlight can make it through to the ground. So they chop the jungle down and burn everything. Then the cassava, like I said, it looks like big yams. When you grow it, you just take a stalk of an existing plant and just bury that stalk in the ground, and it'll sprout up a new crop. And so, you're close to the equator, so you don't have seasons as much. There's some seasonal variation. They do have times, they do have like their wet season and dry season, but it's like you always get about the same amount of darkness as daylight, and they don't have the wild fluctuations that we have in the temperate zone. So they can grow year round. And they stage it. So, you have a crop that's coming in, you have a crop that'll be coming in 3 months, you have a crop that'll be coming in 6 months, you have a crop that'll be coming in 9 months. And once you get a certain number of cycles, I can't remember how many cycles you get off a piece of ground, you let the ground go feral, give it a few years, and then come in and burn it again. Also, intermittently, every time you plant cassava, before you replant, you make a little fire and burn some debris in that same spot. No irrigation. You're not watering it at all. And that's the only fertilizer you're giving it, is you're burning some of the surrounding just detritus scraped up from the jungle floor that you burn there and grow it. And it is a staple of life. That and river fish and game.
It's just such a wild thing that it's such a poisonous plant.
I don't get it.